Hello there, Parth Sharma this side, bringing you best chess games going all around the world. As I continue looking at the finals between Anish Giri and Magnus Carlsen, we have reached set 2. As Magnus Carlsen won set 1, it was very important, or I should say crucial, for Anish Giri to keep the match alive by winning set 2. But going over Carlsen isn't an easy job. So without further ado, let's jump onto the games from set 2 as Magnus Carlsen is white in this game and Anish Giri is black. We are looking at game 1 from their match in set 2. So let's have a go. Carlsen opens with 1d4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight f3 and queen's gambit declined by Anish Giri. Knight c3, c5. So he's following symmetrical Tarrasch sort of structure. So if e3, then knight to c6 will lead to symmetrical Tarrasch. But he goes for cd and knight d. Now this is somewhat semi Tarrasch, so to say, and e4. And if he wants to, then after knight takes c3, this was the game, b takes, he can play g6 and this will transform into Grunfeld type positions where you see these pawn structure, Grunfeld pawn structure and this Grunfeld c5. If Anish Giri plays g6 in this position, would be pretty interesting. But he goes for cd, cd and bishop to b4 check. Bishop d2 blocks the check and the bishops get traded off. And again it looks like pretty much Grunfeld structure, but the problem is there is no g6 and there is no dark square bishop for black in this case. So Anish Giri castles and now bishop to c4. White has tremendous space advantage on the queen side, which often happens in Grunfeld structures, as I keep repeating it, because you can see one of them could become a passer, especially this d pawn. After d5 pawn takes, this pawn actually will become a passer, can become a potential passer, so to say. Knight to d7, Magnus Carlsen castles, b6, rook a to d1, placing both queen and rook into the same line as of the opponent's queen. Bishop b7 developing the bishop and rook f e1 defending the pawn which was attacked by the bishop. So far so good, nothing fussy happening. Rook to c8, bishop to b3, rook to e8. Both sides have developed their pieces and it's only Magnus Carlsen, I think, who has a little bit of an upper hand due to this good center that he has put, and especially anytime he can break with this d5, create a passer in the center. Maybe Magnus Carlsen will have a shot at this rather than Giri in this position. He plays rook to e3, knight to f6, double attack on the pawn, and now d5. This is a very committal move, I would say, and Carlsen had a tricky decision to make in this position, whether to play, whether not to play, and Giri has to take this pawn, and so he did. Now the best would be is to capture the pawn, but then queen d6 just creates a nice blockade, and it's not convincing that how white will progress in that case. So Carlsen keeps his cards alive. I should say keeps his cards open and keeps his options open and plays e5, another very sharp move, giving up a pawn in the center of the board and creating further play by playing e5, giving black a passer on d5, although queen and rook are nicely looking at this pawn, so this pawn isn't going anywhere. I would say isn't going anywhere. Knight to e4 by Anish, queen to e1 obviously because if queen goes here, then a5 is annoying, and then the queen would have eventually have to return to e1. So Carlsen puts it at e1, good move, and now queen to c7 by Anish. And it's very difficult for these pieces to capture this pawn because of it being on a dark square. That's the first thing. And another thing, that this light square bishop, as I said, on being on light square, won't be able to attack this pawn. So the only way that you can take this pawn is to play either f6 or maneuver this knight in some way that you can capture the pawn, because it's defended by the knight, and that's because I'm saying this. And here his plan is to play knight to c3, but it won't be easy, because knight c3, then rook c1, and this knight would be pinned, and that too against queen. So after knight d4, he's preparing this. He plays a6 to stop knight b5. h4 by Magnus. Now he starts to attack on this black king by pushing this pawn to h. Probably want to push it as far as he can, h4. And the best move here would be to play h6 in my opinion. But he plays rook c to d8. But there is a problem here, because this knight has created, as I said, tremendous blockade, and although he's giving up this pawn, or should I say giving up another pawn, but he has tremendous play in this position because of superb placement of its knights. So f3 kicking the knight has to go back, and now h5. So again he's creating more threats in the position, and he's pushing this pawn as far as he could to create some weaknesses towards the black king. Knight to e6, offering knight trade, but Carlsen is having nothing of it, and he puts another piece towards this king and towards the king side. And with this move f3 kicking the knight away, it has also given another square and an opportunity to put this queen as well into the attack. So this is very critical situation. He plays d4, Anish. He pushes his extra pawn, rook e to d3, and now playing knight c5, he gives the pawn back. However, the best move here should have been to play bishop to d5. This would have been a better move, and but the problem then would be knight here, and as I said, you cannot kick that knight away. That would have been thorn in a flesh. So still a very difficult decision that Giri had to make, and he played knight to c5, which I thought was a mistake, because now although he gives his pawn back, but this has allowed tremendous activity for white's pieces. They are bombarding now the king's side. Rook cannot be taken because of mate, so g6 defends that, and now pawn takes on b3. Now here it seems pretty interesting what the best move could be. Probably the best defense in this position is to play bishop takes f3, and this looks like very extraordinary move. Obviously if queen takes, then pawn takes knight and everything sorts out. But what happens if pawn takes? Now table turns, because after queen c1 check, king g2, queen c2 check, you have to bring your queen, and then after this queen exchange, you take the knight. A queen would be exchanged here, so pardon this arrow towards this king. And if you, let's say, go king h3, then queen takes knight would come with check, and that's the problem. Bishop takes f3 would have been a very tricky move in this case. However, white has a winning move in this position, because things went topsy-turvy after knight c5. But bishop takes f3 was a very tricky move if he had played it, and the only winning move that would be in this position is to play rook to c4. And after bishop returns, knight d4, and this bishop is bombarded by white pieces. It's already in the pin. And after queen takes e, queen takes, rook takes, white is up a material. And after this looks like black would hold, but unfortunately he won't, because after rook b7 you will just, I would say, round up that pawn, and this will be a clear winning endgame for white. But after a takes b3, Giri doesn't go for this long endgame. He plays rook to d8, which is a clear blunder in this case. And here Carlsen finds an incredible move. I would say a double exclaim move. e6, brilliant stuff to find this move. And this is, I would say, not so difficult to find, or I should say not so easy. If queens are exchanged, then queen won't be taken. Rook d8 would be made instantly. The knight covers this square, so the queen takes queen is not possible. And if pawn takes, then this queen is hanging, as you can see. So the queen has to move, so it moves to c1 with check, king h2. Now rook takes d4, and Carlsen doesn't recapture the rook. He plays this beautiful e7, threatening to queen, and this rook cannot defend it, because these two possible squares, which are the squares from which he can defend the promotion, are very well taken care of. And this rook is hanging also. Knight takes rook. Queen to c8 defends the promotion. And now comes queen to e5, another superb move. Not only threatening to queen, but also threatening mate in one. And he plays rook to h4 check, which was, I would say, not the best move. Should have taken the knight, but then rook was on pre, and the game would have been done then and there. So he plays rook to h4 check, giving up the rook this way. And Carlsen played here king g3, after which Anish Giri resigned. Well, instead of king g3, Carlsen can play knight takes h4, and let's say if you play queen e8, then h6, and there is no defense to queen g7 mate. So the best move here after knight takes h4 is to play f6, white queens, queen takes, but this is a forced checkmate. G takes f5, now queen e7 check, and if king goes here, then h6, queen g7 will be the end. So king goes up, and now queen takes f6 check, king takes h5, queen takes f5 check, king h6, and after queen f6, king h5, g4 is checkmate. This is all forced, by the way. But as it turned out, after king g3, Anish Giri resigned the game. What a beautiful win this is from Magnus Carlsen. So after game 1, he goes one game up. So what happened in the second game? This was pretty interesting. This was Grunfeld, and we joined the game after move 14 by Anish. And as you can see, so much is pretty similar to that famous game of Anand and Nepomniachtchi, which took place in Online Nations Cup. It was, I would say, one of Anand's finest games, and I will be revealing more details about what I'm talking about at the end of the video, so stay tuned till the very end. So Anish Giri is white. We are at move 14 where he has castle, and it's black to move. And the simple move for Magnus should have been to pick the bishop on d5. And there are no difficulties. Queen d6. Nothing fussy is happening here. And after bishop d7, things will function, I would say, properly, and there won't be any difficulties for either of the players to get another draw. But after castles, Magnus plays bishop to e6, and this is a huge blunder. This gives Anish Giri an opportunity to equalize in this very critical set, which he needs to win. He's trailing a game. Carlsen is leading 1-0 after the very first game, and now he's got opportunity, and the move that he can play is queen to h6. This is the only winning move and a very big move. I would I would say signs of that very famous game of Anand against Nepomniachtchi, and I will be tagging that game. And this is amazing. Queen h6, and if bishop takes d5 looks like the only move to save the game, then knight g5, threatening queen h7. The only way to defend it is to play rook to e8, so that if queen takes, there is this square, and queen takes won't be possible. The bishop would be taken care of. But the problem is e takes d5, and now this threat is pretty ominous. Queen f6 is one of the ways to defend it. But then queen h7 check, king f8, d6 is totally crushing, just restricting this movement. The queen cannot take the knight because of queen h8 mate. Anish Giri would have equalized in this position. Equalized the set, I would say. Not equalized the game, which he always does. So pardon me, Anish. And after queen h6, if he tries to play queen f6, the Magnus, then knight g5 is again a very strong move, threatening mate in 1. So queen g7 forces the exchange of queens, and after king takes, if pawn takes, then this is a fork, you can see, comes with check. So h6 kicking that knight, but then knight will take on f7, and after rook a8, bishop to b3, and if you play c4, stopping bishop's path of defending that, then knight to d6 attacks the rook, c takes b3, knight takes e8, check, rook takes, a takes b3. This is too much for Carlsen to handle, and this would be totally lost if Anish Giri had played queen to h6. But I said if Anish Giri had played queen to h6. Unfortunately, he took the bishop on e6, and Carlsen had absolutely no difficulties at all. This is, I would say, totally equal because of this weakness here, and already the knight is attacked, even though white is a pawn up here, as you can see. But Carlsen is someone who can handle these situations day in, day out. Rook to e8, a4, rook to c7. Now everything is equal, and I will show you the last bits of the game. I will just run through the game because there's nothing to see here. The game eventually ended in a draw. Both sides have 5 pawns each, and pawns were captured. Now this is all in vain. I would say formality job. Carlsen still can try to create some complications, which he always does, but I don't see how both players can push on to this. Obviously, if there aren't no pieces, then there is no majority or minority in this case, and you can see the game just fizzled out. Carlsen still trying to push these 2 pawns. I'm afraid this is just a formality, and the game ended in a draw after the move knight takes c3. So a tragedy, I would say, for Anish in game 2. But what happened in game 3? This is very interesting. We joined this game after the move g6 from Anish. Anish is black and Magnus is white in this case. So the score line reads 1.5 against half. Carlsen is leading a point against Anish, and we are going into game 3. Anish is black, Magnus is white. Anish has played g6 now, and this is another critical moment. Best move here should have been to play queen to b4 to tuck this rook back and show this rook its place, because if you play this, then queen b3, it's pretty annoying, and eventually this rook have to leave this. or maybe to bring the queen into defense, like playing queen to a8 or a5 for that matter. But still, I would say queen b4 would have been a better option. But instead Carlsen plays d4, and this allows the opportunity for Anish to cash in, because queen c7, now d5, and the best move here should have been to just capture first and then play bishop to d7. Anish plays bishop to d7 immediately. Carlsen surprisingly plays king h2. Best move here should have been to play c5 to create more complications in the center, open up more lines in the center, and to break through. But after cd5, you can see we reach the very similar position that Anish would have reached if he had played bishop d7 instead of, I would say, if Anish had played cd and then bishop d7, this very position with king on g1 would have reached. But now king to h2 and we reach this same position. Still okay, I would say. And now Anish plays king to g7. His basic idea is after queen b4, he doesn't want any rook or queen to invade the space, and this would be very good for white if he manages to play queen b4 and queen b8. So king g7. So if now queen b4, you can still keep the queen active by playing, let's say, queen c2, or not queen c2 but queen c3, and that would be okay. Or even rook c3 also would be okay in that case. So Carlsen plays knight to d1, stopping rook c3. Excuse me. And now h5. Anish plays h5. Queen c1, so offering trade of queens. Queen a5. Anish Giri declines the trade of queens. And now rook to b7, so invading black's space in this case, although bishop is defended by this knight. And here I would say the best move should have been for Giri, who looks very much better in this case. Obviously it all started with this d4, which weakened Magnus's position to some extent, and here he could play rook to a1, Anish. Now to queen to c3, queen to a6, things look very tricky indeed. Queen to b2, looks like everything is sorted, but then g5 is a very, I would say, very nasty move. And if bishop takes, then knight takes, you can give up this bishop, but then white has, or I should say, yeah, black has too much activity. If you give the bishop is somewhat overloaded, because the rook can also take this knight on d1. So rook b6, attacking this pawn and the queen. So queen moves to a3, defend the pawn, and also offering the trade of queens. But now the problem is after queen takes, rook takes d6, g4, and now after bishop to e2, rook to a2, the bishop is running very low on squares, or I should say very low for the answers, because now threats are to take here and opening lines, creating this deadly pass pawn, and this endgame must be suitable for black in this case. Hg, and after hg, you don't want to take here because then g5 would have been I would say pretty annoying. As I say, if rook takes, then g5, the only defender to this bishop, you kick that away and then you take this, and this passer can become good enough for counterattack. So you take this, and if you take, then knight takes with check, so no time to take it. And this would be actually enough for black to win. However, after rook b7, he plays h4, still okay, but it has given white some drawing chances here. Queen b2, rook to a4, queen c3, queen takes, knight takes, and this knight is in fact on decent square compared to this d1 square. Rook to a3, knight goes back to d1, king f8, rook b6 attacking the pawn, king e7 defending the pawn, rook to b7 pinning this bishop, g5, knight f2, and there will be some complications, but I think that the position would be better for black if some actions aren't taken. So Magnus is repeating here, and after this move, threefold repetition, it's a draw. So game 3 ended in a draw, which means that Anish Giri is making life difficult for himself by drawing these games. So he must win game 4 to keep the match alive and at least force blitz. So what happened here? Giri was white, or I should say Magnus was white, and Giri was black. And yeah, I might be mistaking it. Well, we reach this move that b takes a3 by white at move 25, and here I think it was Giri with black, I should say. No, Magnus is black, so he takes the bishop, rook takes, and now rook to b7, bishop to c2, knight to e7, and now he plays knight f6 check. And if pawn takes, then e takes, knight g6, queen e3 is absolutely nasty for black here. So king, and if you play king h7, then rook h5 is actually the end. So after knight f6, you cannot take the knight, so king f8, and now queen to g4. And again the similar situation, if you take, then queen h4, and things are very nasty. Rook b5, knight h5, g6, queen to f4, and now knight to f5, which looks like pretty natural, but in fact Carlsen, I would say, doesn't take advantage of this. It plays rook takes b5, queen takes, and now bishop takes f5, g5, queen goes to f3, and after e takes f5, it looks like everything is winning here. Probably after knight f6, everything would be winning, but comes queen takes f5, which was a blunder. And well, I will let you know who were the black and white. I am just getting confused here. I think probably Magnus was white in this case. And queen e2 is the only drawing move in this position, forking the rook and the knight. So after rook c1, you take the knight, and everything is sorted now. Queen f6, rook takes d4, and Carlsen was white. Yes, Carlsen was white, Giri was black. And after this, I'm afraid it's nothing better to draw the game. So if you play king to d7, then actually you pick the rook. And with this draw, this was the last move of the game. Magnus Carlsen still wins the set, and he holds the title of the Chessable Master. I would say the ultimate Chessable Master. So congratulations for Magnus Carlsen winning this tournament. And Anish Giri fought hard, but not hard enough. Bad times for Anish, and he wasn't up to his form. So that was that. After 4 games, Carlsen won this set 2.5, 1.5, and wins the Chessable Masters tournament as well. So that was the last day of the Chessable Masters tournament. I will be looking at some more games from Chess Classics. So I hope you liked this video. I hope you liked my analysis. Probably I would be looking at another great chess player, top 15 games. Probably it would be Vishy. Yes, I've given it away. I would be looking at top 15 best chess games by none other than the Indian legend Vishwanathan Anand. So I will be starting that series from tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Stay safe. Cheers. Bye.